This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories.
You don't need to be up here. You can do this on your own.
That's probably true. Thank you. You're right to applaud. Thank you. Thanks for waiting too. I know I'm a few minutes late. Hey, everybody.
Hey, welcome to the DC Unleashed panel with Sean Gunn. I don't think there's a better person, maybe James, but like to talk about DC.
Pushing it.
Well, you're playing three characters, which is pretty awesome. They're so uniquely defined and so different, right? Weasel, G.I. Robot, Maxwell Lord. For each one of those characters, what is on their playlist if you're listening to music? What are those characters listening to on a playlist?
Wow. I immediately, my brain went to thinking about Weasel listening to like birds, like sounds of birds doing different bird calls. I don't know that he would quite have a playlist. G.I. Robot, I think a lot of just old wartime stuff. You know, the names like the Andrews Sisters and you know, anything like pro, you know, Yankee Doodle Dandy kind of stuff. And then Maxwell Lord, that one I got to think about a little bit. Gosh, I don't think I can pin down on anything there. I bet Maxwell Lord is kind of into like early 2000s emo kind of stuff. You know, like, I mean, he listens to Bright Eyes and like, you know, I don't know. I like that question, but I'm gonna think about it more so that next time I get it, I'll have a better answer.
So next time you actually...
And I'm open to suggestions too,
Yeah. Look, I love the Suicide Squad, and actually the Weasel was a character I wasn't super familiar with. I'm a big DC fan growing up, but I wasn't really familiar with that character. When you knew that you were going to play Weasel, what was your approach to the body motion of that character? Because the body movement is such an important part of him being so distinct. Same thing with Rocket, but it's a completely different approach to his movement.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I didn't know much about the Weasel either. I saw the comic books he was in, which are totally, you know, my brother James just loves like really obscure characters that kind of have no business being in existing period, probably. You know, like Starro and like, you know, these, like when I knew I was gonna play the Weasel, James described him to me as almost like a big dog. Like he's not an actual like human, you know, or humanoid mastermind, but that he's just kind of a large animal, a genetically engineered animal to be human sized. And so I literally just watch YouTube videos of actual weasels behaving and listening to them and doing and like mimicking their sounds and their voices and things like that. And then I let the physical stuff I let come from that. Like it just sort of, I try to kind of get it into my head, and then eventually something comes out that feels right. And then I just try to do that as much as I can, and I have no shame, fortunately. So yeah, hopefully it works.
Now, with a character like the Weasel, obviously, I don't know if James is even thinking that, oh, we're going to tell more stories with this character when he's making the Suicide Squad. But how much did you know about the future of the character and where it was going with Creature Commandos during that time? Or did nothing at all?
No, I knew, what I knew was that, spoiler alert, I knew that Weasel was innocent of killing all of those children, you know?
You knew that during Suicide Squad?
Yeah. He said, you know, James told me he didn't really kill 27 children or whatever it is, 23 children. He didn't elaborate on that. But at some point, after he had the idea for Creature Commandos, he told me about Weasel's backstory and sort of filled me in on what happened there, which is like tragic. It's really, it's very interesting from my perspective to play this character who is essentially comic relief in Suicide Squad and play him as a comic character, and then be tasked with bringing his emotional life to the screen in Creature Commandos and having a very limited toolkit in which to do so, because I'm doing it with with sounds and grunts and squawks and things like that, rather than a full array of the human voice. So it was an interesting acting task for me to try to really make that character realistic, so that as an audience member, that your brain goes from, wow, this guy's such a goofball, he's so funny, he's comic relief, to, oh, I actually feel something here for this character. It's cool.
Yeah, there's that episode that everyone has seen, Creature Commandos, yeah? We're not gonna spoil anything here. But yeah, that episode with the Weasel, I was blown away. It was incredible to see that character's journey and arc and kind of getting the backstory of that character, because I didn't think it would hit me as emotionally as it kind of did.
Yeah, in most of the episodes of Creature Commandos, we would piecemeal, as it goes, Weasel's grunts and whatever, so that we're kind of going scene by scene. But for that episode, we really wanted to do a long, extended version, so that we're kind of experiencing it along with him. So we really only did, I think, maybe 2 full takes of the whole like 10-minute sequence of what goes on with the children from playing through the fire and through all that stuff. So we just did a long sequence of it, and that was it was very cool.
I love that you said earlier that James has his affinity for lesser known characters.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big DC fan growing up. I also have that same kind of passion for those characters. I'm a big Animal Man fan, so I'm hoping we get into that somewhere down the line. But with G.I. Robot, it's a character that I did know, but I didn't know as deeply as we get to meet him in Creature Commandos. What excited you the most about voicing G.I. Robot?
Well, like G.I. Robot, I hate Nazis. So he is the hero that we need for these troubling times.
That's true.
I love that character. I responded to him right away, and James told me about the character pretty early on. Again, when he was writing Creature Commandos and was in the mix of like putting the whole thing together, he said, I have another, because he'd asked me about doing Weasel, and I was like, yeah, that's cool, but man, like, it's just grunting and growling for hours on end. He's like, I have another character too, who actually speaks. I'm like, okay. And yeah, I just think he's a really interesting character. I was listening to old newsreels, like News on the March kind of thing, like News on the March, and trying to kind of affect it, because I felt like his voice would be like specifically engineered so that it's soothing for people to hear, that he has this, and I kind of approached it from that point of view. But yeah, I really again, it's another really interesting. It's an interesting process trying to bring that character to life, because he, again, has a limited toolkit. He's a robot, but he's a robot who is just teetering on the verge of understanding things in the way that a human does. So he knows that he has this one basic objective, which is to kill Nazis, and that's his driving force for everything. But he can also sense that the idea of friendship feels good, when he's got his old friends who cheers him. It's like, oh, something about that human connection feels right, and I want more of that. So it's almost like it's kind of like AI, actually. It's almost like this robot character just dipping his toe into the waters of being sentient and understanding what it means to be human. That's a really interesting place to play for me as an actor, and I love that character.
Now, listen, I'm a fan of DC. I'm sure that you are too. If we could geek out just a little bit. Anybody? I'm sure all of us have seen Superman. Twice? 3 times? 4 times? All right, there we go. I'm also on that 4-time vote with you
That
guys.
guy's hand was staying up no matter how.
I loved Superman. This is the Superman that I kind of always wanted. Anybody that's seen My Adventures with Superman? It reminded me so much of that take on Superman, and I think that David Cornsweet, James, and that whole cast just got it right. It was magic in a bottle, literally. Well, not literally, metaphorically. But it is magic. That movie was absolute magic. But we get a glimpse of Maxwell Lord. We get a taste of Maxwell Lord in that. And one of the things everybody, I'm sure, has seen the Hall of Justice mural. And in there is Maxwell Lord. So I have to ask, what is your theory about the characters that are in there and Maxwell Lord specifically, David? You have a theory.
I think I have more than a theory.
I don't want to push you for like spoilers.
I think I have an answer. I'm just not going to tell you what it is. Well, what do we know about Maxwell Lord? We know that he is, and we've got Peacemaker coming out, so we'll learn more later this week about that. But we know that he's a rival billionaire. That Lord Tech is an adversary of Luthor Corp essentially, and that he is starting the seeds of this Justice Gang, and I can't say much more about that. But again, he's a fascinating character to me, and I've loved tackling him. I think that our version is different from anything that we've seen yet in any other movie or any other incarnation. There is some source materials that we use a little bit for the character, but also, like a lot of things in the DCU, we're trying to also. It's like you pay homage to the characters, but you're also rebooting them a little bit in certain ways. So you kind of try to find that right line to walk. But yeah, it's been fun.
It's paying respects to the characters but also putting their own kind of like spin on it, which I really, really enjoy. I gotta ask about the Justice Gang, because who came up with the name? Guy Gardner or Maxwell Lord?
I don't think I can comment on that.
So there's a definitive answer for this.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I can comment on it. I'm gonna have to leave that one up to you for now.
I would.
Your speculation.
Well, let me ask you guys. You think it's Maxwell Lord? Most of you guys think it's Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner. That's what I thought too.
Okay.
I'm on that train. With the Justice Gang, we have Mr. Terrific, we have Hawk Girl, we have who am I missing? Mr. Terrific, Hawk Girl. Oh, Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
Guy Gardner. Can you talk about the relationships that Maxwell Lord has with each one of them?
I think that it's the whole process is very new for all of us. For those characters, that we're just kind of figuring out what this means and where this thing can go. It's fun, I think, to be right on the ground floor of, oh, this could be a thing where we actually put these people together. I think that with both Guy and a Hawk Girl, that they're very much a part of the team right away, and I think that Maxwell knows that they're kind of the first people to get there, to get under the wing, so to speak. And Mr. Terrific, of course, I can't talk too much about that. I can only say that I'm very excited to share all of that backstory with an audience when the time comes. But I can't. I don't want to see my name in the papers.
Let me do the speculation.
Yeah.
We know how Maxwell Lord feels about Lex Luthor because we get it kind of at the end of the film.
Yeah, he sucks.
Yeah, he sucks. But how does he feel about Superman?
That's another one that I think I know. But I mean, you can imagine that. I don't think it's a stretch to feel that he would be very much. If you own a basketball team, you want LeBron James or Nikola Jokic on your team, or I was about to use a member of the Bulls, but I'm sorry about your team. And And so you can imagine that Maxwell Lord's assembling this team that I'm sure that he very much wants to recruit Superman.
Now, you talked earlier about inspirations that you're taking from Maxwell Lord, and obviously it's going to put its own spin on it, so it's not going to be a direct one-to-one. But are there any particular comics that fans can like kind of read to get a vibe of what Maxwell Lord's going to be in this universe?
Yes.
Great answer. Yes. Great answer. Are there any real-world?
Any that I can mention? Not really. I gotta be,
Yeah.
I gotta leave the people in charge to drop the stuff the way they want to drop it.
Yeah, let's talk about Superman a little bit more because it is such a fantastic movie. It's also out now, available as of the 15th, I believe, on digital. David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan have such incredible chemistry.
Yeah.
I love seeing David Clark. I feel like that is such a great interpretation of the character. When you first saw them together as Superman and Lois or Clark and Lois, what was your initial reaction?
Honestly, and I've been hearing from James about how great their auditions were. My brother very, very thorough when he is auditioning for roles. He leaves no stone unturned. He does not jump to, oh, who's the biggest name that's interested in this? He wants to really, really find the actors who are exactly right for the role, and also find good human beings to work with, because life's too short to work with a-holes. So so I knew that he had been looking, and I knew who he kind of liked, and then when he finally showed me the scene of them acting together, which was also the scene of their screen tests, so that was the same scene that they auditioned with. I was just knocked out. I really think that there's a degree of difficulty factor that is hard to quantify for when you're watching somebody act. It's like some roles look harder than they are, and some look easier than they are. And I think that the idea of playing Superman and also Lois Lane were these iconic characters that everybody comes in with some notion of what they should be like, or what their own mental images of those characters. So right out of the gate you're going to disappoint a percentage of people, that not everyone's going to be happy. But what you're trying to do is find the emotional truth of the character, make them realistic, make them honest, and have as many people as possible understand, oh, I get this. And I just think they both absolutely knock it out of the park. I think they're fantastic.
Superman was one of the only movies that I really tried my best to avoid any trailers, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously saw the first one, it blew me away, but I didn't really want to see anything after that because I wanted the movie to go out, and it did. When you know that you're going into a universe and it's essentially being rebooted, with all the buzz around that character, there's a lot of expectation. What are some of the things that you knew that James had to get right in order for this Superman to be successful?
I think the most important thing is the tone, is just the question of who Superman is and what he means to the world in 2025. And I think that's always going to be changing. So previous incarnations of the character, they're coming about at a different time, and maybe they have a different function or a different thing that they're doing, and that's all fine, and it's good. But seeing a Superman movie right now with the way the world is, Superman has to be something specific. And I think just the general idea that Superman represents kindness more than anything, and a sense of hopefulness in a world that has a lot of hopelessness is the most important thing. So I think keeping that as the beacon for what the movie is was essential.
I also love the fact that there's this interconnectivity that's going to happen between the film and the TV shows. What excites you the most about exploring those character arcs through both mediums?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's, the idea that the movies and the TV shows can live in the same universe, but also have different tones and textures, even be different genres, I think is definitely the way to go. And it makes me very excited for the things that have more of a horror bent or more of a dramatic bent, or things like that. I think that's really cool. I love the idea that the animated characters, like in Creature Commandos, are played by people who can play them live action. I don't know whether that means we'll see them again or not, but we could. And so, because they live in that world, so if they're there, they can be there. And the idea that that stuff is all integrated, but that it hopefully won't look homogenous, that every part of it will be different. I'm pretty jazzed.
Yeah, me too. I actually think that's the one thing that excites me the most about the universe, is because even when I read the comics, right, like Batman comics feel different than Superman comics, which feel different than like Teen Titans, right? It all feels like it lives in the same world. They all have a different tone. And I'm really excited that James is having these other directors and writers really kind of create their own tone, their own characters that all live within the same world. With that being said, what projects are exciting to you that have been announced? What are you most looking forward to? Even if you're not in it, obviously.
Right, I'm really looking forward to Lantern. It's a great deal.
Yes.
I think both Damon Lindelof and Steve King are just geniuses. So the idea of seeing that show is very exciting. And then there's other stuff that I can't talk about too much, but there are things that are starting to pop up that I just, it's cool.
You said that, with Creature Commandos, you have actors that can physically play those roles too. Do we get a Nutty Professor style DC movie with you playing G.I. Robot, the Weasel, and Maxwell Lord all together?
I know, write it, man, and I got a guy I can give the script to.
Yeah.
I know a guy. Yeah.
Peacemaker Season 2 is upon us, and I cannot wait. So this is the great thing about the releases that DC or Warner Brothers has been doing. We had Superman come out, like a month and a half ago?
Yeah, July 11th.
So about a month and a half ago. And then we roll right into Peacemaker. And then we get a little bit of time to marinate, and then we get Supergirl, and then we get Green Lantern, which I'm so excited about all those projects. But to Peacemaker, which is coming up right around the corner, how does Maxwell Lord and the Justice League kind of fit into that? Because I know that they're in the trailer, but I have avoided seeing kind of anything else.
Oh man, it's coming out so soon. I don't think I can talk about it too much. It's cool, we're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to interviewing people for a position in the Justice Gang. And let's be frank, every hero, once in, it's a good gig. So there's a lot of them that are coming, and you'll just have to see what happens with it.
Well, maybe you can talk about this. Can you talk about how the tone on set is working on Peacemaker Season 2?
Oh, it's great. I mean, again, it's a bunch of professionals who are really good people who are passionate about the project. I think one of my brother's strengths is really getting everybody on board so that they understand this is the story we're telling and this is what we're making. And so it's a great set. I think in particular, the way that John Cena has progressed as an actor, and he's awesome. And you come at it from the world he comes from. When you first start as an actor, there are a lot of raised eyebrows and people wondering if you can really kind of make that transition. And I just think his performance is remarkable.
Yeah, John Cena is incredible as a Peacemaker. It's so crazy right now.
And a great dude.
Yeah, really nice guy.
If anyone met him yesterday.
Yeah, very motivational. I hear his panel and his answers were very, eloquent, very encouraging. I wish something else I could.
What is that direct? Are you trying to say something about my answers?
Sean, your answers are phenomenal. You're killing it. You're crushing it.
Okay.
Look,
I'll be John Cena someday. I work hard.
you and your brother have obviously worked together many times. At this point now, I mean, even through film and animation, there hasn't been a shorthand with you guys at this point now. Talk to me about how that working relationship has evolved at this point, and how it's just, is it automatic? You just know exactly what kind of he's looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't always know exactly what he's looking for, but I can tell when he hasn't gotten it. And I think he would say the same about me, that he can tell when I'm not entirely happy with the performance, and I can tell when he's like, when it's not there. So we know when we have to work something out and when we don't. But we've been working together since we were kids in one capacity or another, and it's very, very easy. I get probably the most common question I get is, what's it like to work with your brother? And the true answer is that it's pretty great. He's very good at what he does, and our jobs fit together well. And you know, we're on the same page, and we're brothers, we're great friends, we love each other, but also there's a job to get done, and we're on the same team, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. As a fan that grew up with things like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider and Giant Kaijus, I love the appreciation that James has for that stuff, because we've seen it in Guardians, we've seen Kaijus now in the Suicide Squad, and also in Superman. Talk to me about some of those early influences on the both of you that made you become filmmakers and actors.
Yeah, I think that we definitely overlap on movies a lot. James was always the comic book guy in my family. He was a real, like, you know, crate digger when it came to old comics, and would read everything, knew everything, and that was not my thing. I was more of like a sports fan, and there's 6 of us, by the way, so it's not just me and James. There's another 3 boys and our sister. So we come from a big family. I get influences from all over the place. But we all love movies and pop culture in general and TV shows. So I think there's a whole you know, there's a whole list of movies that were influential to us. We like old movies. We of course, you know, grew up on things like, you know, like everyone did, like The Godfather, Chinatown, and things. But we also like loved a lot of weird old 70s movies and Hal Ashby movies, and learned what it really meant. And I think for me, as a performer, I was always wondering what the actors were doing and how they were doing it, and things like that. Yeah.
I really love your brother's approach to practicality also. I feel that especially with something like Superman, I know a lot was done in camera. How does that, all that physicality and all that stuff being there physically on set, how does that affect you as a performer?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, it's just the preparation is so intense. So there's the great thing about working on one of my brother's movies is that more work has been done before you arrive at set than on almost any other movie you would work on. It's all, they're ready to go. So all of the, you know, you have the freedom then to really just play and open it up when you're performing a scene, and when the camera says action, you already know all the little stuff. You know the choreography. You know what the idea of the character is, what the arc of the scene is, and all that stuff. And then you're able to really play within those parameters, which is the best.
We do have some pre-submitted fan questions. Before I get to those, though, one of my co-workers at Screen Rant, Tatiana Hollander, wants me to ask you this question about Gilmore Girls. Kirk is still one of the most beloved characters, quirky characters in TV history. Looking back, what do you made him so endearing despite all of his odd jobs and eccentricities? Did I say that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. It's funny, I didn't know until I sat down that this was a DC centered panel, and so I was expecting a lot more Gilmore Girls questions.
There might be a lot more on there.
I thought it was just a me panel, and I usually get a lot of Gilmore Girls questions. But I appreciate it. I love talking about the DCU. I think that Kirk, like the show in general, there's a nostalgia about Gilmore Girls where it just feels comforting. I'm really of the opinion that people long for a time where they know their neighbors, and that that neighbors can treat one another like family or as extended family, and we get less and less of that, I think, in the modern era, and people want that, and that's why it's comforting to watch the show. Kirk himself is just a big, you know, he's a man-child. He's like a 9-year-old trapped in a grown man's body. at the end of the day, he's very sweet and harmless, but he's also, petulant and throws tantrums and he'll lie if he needs to, and all the things that children do before they learn how to be better people. Kirk just kind of stopped there. But I love playing that character. He's great.
Look, I was just reading some of these. We have more Gilmore Girls questions.
Yeah.
Melissa from
It never dies. You can't
Never.
kill Gilmore.
Melissa from Seattle, Washington asks, I've been a Gilmore Girls fan since forever, and Kirk was always my favorite character. What was the weirdest job Kirk had, and what was the most fun to film? Stars Hollow wouldn't have been the same without him.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know what the weirdest job he had was. I mean, I walked on stilts. And, the filmmaking was pretty weird. I don't know. Like the ones my favorites, the ones are the ones that are easiest. So if I have to sit down and work all day, those are my favorites. Like being an announcer. I was an announcer at a hockey game. I'm like, this is great. I just sit in this chair and I do one shot all day, and then I get to go home. So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer.
Well, this one's from Tyler from Austin, Texas. Tyler asks, the way that you played Kraglin in Guardians 3 was awesome. What was it like getting to use Yondu's fin and arrow in the final movie after being part of the Ravagers crew for so long?
That was awesome. I really feel like my arc over the course of the 3 Guardians movies, that the character of Kraglin, his arc in many ways mimicked my own arc as an actor, being associated with the movie and kind of coming on as feeling like sort of a kid brother or a side part or just being sort of texture in the background to by the 3rd movie being a full-fledged member of the team. And I certainly felt like a member of the team as far as we had done 3 Guardians movies plus Thor: Love and Thunder, and then
Holiday special.
some stuff in the holiday special and some stuff in Avengers. Particularly Karen and I did a lot of Avengers. So I think that it was special to have all of that stuff kind of come full circle.
Amazing. Betty from Minnesota says, how difficult is it to do the motion capture work for Rocket? Because it is such a collaborative effort between you, Bradley Cooper, and James Gunn.
Yeah, and in the visual effects team in general too. It physically, I turned 50 last year, and it's hard enough on my feet and my ankles to play Rocket that I think I'm officially retired from playing Rocket on the set. But it was definitely worth it, and it's exactly right. It's a collaborative process. I think in some ways, Rocket is one of the more difficult characters to be fully realized on screen that we've seen in really any of these movies, like any of the CGI characters. He's very tricky. It takes a whole bunch of people to do it. And I've always thought of it sort of as like a relay race where James writes the script and he hands the baton to me, and I do my thing on set, and then I hand the baton to the special effects team, and they start to animate the character. They go from there, they start to put the scenes together, and then Bradley's the anchor, and he comes in and he does his amazing vocal performance and sort of he makes sure that everything comes together in making the character fully realized. And I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the work that we did, and I'm glad I got to be part of it.
Is there anything that you took from Rocket to make sure that you didn't want to do for the Weasel, simply because of how hard it was physically?
Well, Weasel at least walks on 2 legs. No, I didn't. I honestly didn't think of them as being similar too much. Rocket is so small.
Well, I mean more opposite.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I try not to think of that too much. I'm sort of starting with 0 for any character.
Very cool. This one is from Marcus from Philly. He asked, huge fan of your work in the Belko experiment. What was it like working with your brother James on these intense projects versus something more lighthearted like Guardians? And is there a different dynamic on set with those projects?
Well, that movie, The Belko Experiment, was a horror movie. If you've never seen it, it's fun. But it was very fun to shoot. And I don't think I don't think it's totally different. I think that they're more the same than they are different, because they're, off camera when the director yells cut, we're the same people that we always are. The task may be different of the story that we're trying to tell, but for the most part, working together on set is pretty much the same for any project.
Before I get back to this, another question popped into my head. So I was talking to Frank Grillo not terribly long ago, and he was talking about the difference between Marvel and working with James in the DCU. And he said the one thing he loved about working with James is that when the character of Rick Flag was kind of pitched to him, nothing really changed. James made sure that everything stayed the same. He loved where the character was going, where the art was going, but nothing really changed. Whereas Crossbones, he wasn't quite sure. It was something that was pitched to him, and then it kind of changed through the process. With a character like Maxwell Lord, do you currently know where that character's full story arc is going? I'm not going to ask you when you'll see it happen, but do you know where it is going?
Yeah, I kind of got to plead the fifth on some of that a little bit. I have a sense for who he is, and we've discussed like elements of the character, so that, as Frank says, so that I'm not going in the wrong direction. We know sort of where the center of the character is, but I can't talk too much about where it's going.
I'm sure that through line of the core of the character, depending on the different projects, is going to stay the same, even though the projects may be different. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Now, this one's from Aisha from Miami, Florida. She asks, which role challenged you more as an actor, and what techniques did you use to create such different characters?
It's been a weird defining element of my career. I never expected it. I didn't go looking for it, but being this kind of utility infielder of doing, I feel like I fit a lot of different things that are sort of eccentric or esoteric characters, where I do a lot of different small types of things, which is really, really fun. It can be tricky. I talked a little bit about how it's tricky to play Weasel, and it's tricky to play G.I. Robot in certain ways. The hardest thing that I've had to do in my career is playing, and this isn't one character, but the days on Guardians when I would play Kraglin and Rocket in the same scene, that was incredibly tricky. It took a lot of preparation, and it took a lot of focus, mental focus, which are the main elements of my job as an actor anyway, preparation and focus. And it just takes that much more, and you have to be sure that you're well rested, that so that when the time comes and I'm playing one character or the other, that I'm ready to give 100% of myself to either role. And that's honestly the trickiest thing that I've done in my career. I would love to play an easier character. I'd love to play a 51-year-old adult human male, which I'm kind of getting there with Maxwell Lord, I guess. He's sort of the most close to my actual self that I've played in a long time, which is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to it.
You do have such a great, just listening to you, do such a great voice for being a color commentator in a sports type of thing.
I just thought maybe I'd fall back on that if the acting thing didn't work out.
Do you have any, who's your teams?
Clippers in basketball.
The Clippers, let's go.
Yeah, in baseball, I don't know if I can say it in this crowd, it's Cardinals fan. It's not my fault your team's terrible. Although not this year.
I'm from LA, so all right, so Doug from Portland asks, my customer always debate this, since you're both Kraglin and on-set Rocket, do you ever find yourself accidentally mixing up the character's mannerisms during filming? Does Kraglin ever accidentally channel some of Rocket's attitude?
No.
Fair answer.
I mean, that's a totally legitimate, reasonable question. I don't mean to poo-poo it, but that's the focus I'm talking about. You got to kind of stay in what you're doing when you're doing it.
This one's from Lily from Chicago. She says, I just binged all of Gilmore Girls last summer and literally died laughing at all your scenes. What was your favorite?
Figuratively, again. We're hoping. Let's
hope so. Let's hope so. Yeah. What was your favorite Kirk storyline, and do you have any behind-the-scenes stories from filming the Netflix revival here?
Oh gosh. You know, all my favorite stuff from Gilmore Girls would be the late nights. We would do these scenes that were town meetings, and we'd always be filming them on a Friday because we could go as late as possible and not screw up the next day's filming because we were off Saturdays. So we'd usually go to like sunrise on Saturday, and we'd have to do everyone's coverage, and everyone would get punchy, and you know, at some point the old timers, Sally and Liz would start singing old show tunes and dancing with the background artists and things like that. Those are some of my fondest memories. I got to work with a lot of great character actors who were in older generations and learn from them and work with them, which are my favorite memories from the show. I mean, behind the scenes stuff, I don't know, I'm getting older, but it was definitely a cool show to work on, but it was hard. We worked really, really long hours on that show.
Are you here for the rest of the convention?
I'm here till the end of the day today.
You guys have questions for Sean? All right, well, you can meet him at his booth because this, I'm sorry. You can meet him at his booth, ask those questions, get your personal.
That was like he did one of these.
But I promise, get your own personal experience with them. You have been amazing. Thank you so much for being open and honest with us.
Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.